Hello everyone, today Tillotama Shome, the enormously talented Indian film actress, will be joining us on WHRB 95.3 FM, Harvard Radio Broadcasting. Tillotama's body of work is extremely diverse. Over her 20-year career, she has done everything from international projects to independent films to mainstream commercial films. She's best known for her work in films like Mira Nair's Monsoon Wedding, Anup Singh's Qissa, Konkona Sensharma's ADeathInTheGunj, and most recently Rohena Gera's Sir. Over the years, she has picked up several awards, including the Best Actress Award at the 2013 New Horizons Film Festival, the 2019 New York Indian Film Festival, and the 2019 Jagran Film Festival. Welcome to WHRB, Tillotama.
Thank you so much.
I know you're calling from Mumbai this morning, but your journey actually began in Kolkata, India. You were born in Kolkata and you grew up all over India since your father was with the Indian Air Force. So I'm curious to understand more about your childhood years and how they shaped your identity and maybe even your interest in the arts.
So actually I happen to be in Calcutta right now because a film of mine is playing at the Kolkata International Film Festival.
Oh wow, okay.
And so growing up, I really didn't think, in retrospect, I guess I was preparing for a life in the arts, but I really didn't know then because I never saw myself, as an actor. My father moved, every 4 years to a new place and we learned a new language and forgot the one before. It was a life of, like gypsies, in a way. You move and you make new friends. You just learn to adapt. And I think in retrospect that life perhaps was preparing me to embrace the life of an actor, which, perhaps one facet of that is being empathic. And I think growing up with that kind of diversity that India is, I saw an India which was very, very secular, where lines were never drawn. They were very blurry, and a sense of identity wasn't connected to religion, sports. And I think art and being an artist and an actor, came about much, much later. I encountered the world of theatre when I was in first year college, and I saw my first play, and it was a one-man show. This wonderful actor called Piyush Mishra, and he did so many characters, and I saw him and I was like, wow, this is absolutely insane. I can't even talk to one person without losing my, sense of self. I used to be extremely introverted and I had a stammer. It's only in college when I saw my first play, I was like, if I can do this actually, I might be able to just do anything. And that's how it really started. It was really an act of defiance to try and be an actor, to try and be a performer. And yes, and that's how my first play traveled a lot. And in the many tellings of that play, along the way, I lost my stammer. And so truly, drama became very therapeutic for me.
Amazing. And then from theater, in 2001, you transitioned into films. And your first film in 2001, Monsoon Wedding, which is one of my favorite films, was directed by Mira Nair, who also happens to be a Harvard College alum. How is it like just to work with Mira Nair and all the people who are in the cast? Because the cast is also amazingly stellar.
Oh my God, it was, I actually fell off my chair when I saw the list of actors. That Mira had in her film. When I heard that I had been selected to play the part of Alice, I truly thought there would be others like me, like complete newcomers. Because if she's taking someone like me, then the rest of them would be like me, inexperienced and complete novices. So I really didn't understand. I wasn't prepared. I thought it would be amateurs, doing the film, but they were all like really professionals and they were wonderful. Kulbhushan Kharbanda was wonderful. Nasib Bin Shah was so supportive. They realized it was my first film and they were always looking out for me, and I'm really glad for that. And Mira, I don't even know how to describe her magic, because it is magic. She is a woman who can truly make you feel. When she talks to you, when she looks at you, when she converses with you, it's like a dialogue which is so honest and so powerful, because she really makes you feel like you're the center of the universe,
And clearly that film did so well. It touched so many people, and that led to a start of an amazing career, I think. But then in 2004, you decided to move to New York City. You enrolled at the New York University for a master's degree in educational theater. And while you were in New York, I also read that you taught theater to prison inmates at Rikers Island and women in domestic shelters. How was this experience like? And did it offer anything new that you didn't know about before?
You can train for it in class, and you can understand a module, and you can understand how to use theater for therapy in a classroom. But really, it's until you are actually in the act of doing it that you really understand it. And it was quite a significant turning point in my life. And I feel like I learned more about acting. I learned more about performance in prison than I did in class. But it also broke my heart. It also made me realize that ones inside are not the ones necessarily guilty. And I found it very difficult to continue working for a system that is so riddled with a kind of violence that is really not spoken about. Condoms are contraband items in prison, but I'm asked to do safe sex and HIV/AIDS workshops at the beginning of every class of mine, until a student in my class said, "What's the point of you giving us these lectures on safe sex practices and how to prevent HIV/AIDS, given that condoms are contraband?" I didn't really know how to answer that question. It's just deeply ironic. And while there are a lot of people who are working within the system to rehabilitate it, I saw it suddenly in a very different way. There were too many holes, and I think it also became a point of breakup for me.
And speaking of that breakup with America, you went back to Mumbai and back to films. Some of the films that came out from those early years of going back to Bombay include films like Qissa, directed by Anup Singh. And Qissa is a film where you played an incredibly complex character called Kanwar, who is a woman but who's grown up as a man. I'm curious to learn more about these characters and what did those early years of moving back to Bombay look like?
I was really intimidated by an earlier trip to Bombay that I had made, because the city is just so busy, and I was there for I think 14 days, and I went to New York. But I think after working in New York and after working within the prison system, I was ready for Bombay. So when I came back, I wasn't intimidated by Bombay at all. I think I came into Bombay with an understanding that this is something that I really love doing. And I moved to Bombay when I was 30. And by Indian Bollywood standards, you're too old by then to play anything meaningful. And I knew it would be difficult. And I had no illusions of it being easy. But I had saved up enough money for a year's rent in Bombay. And I decided I was going to really enjoy this new city, and I would have enough money for rent for a year so that I don't have to do anything that comes my way. And things did come my way before that year was up. And there were all actually international co-productions in which I had small but fun parts, and they didn't care whether you were a star or not. And so it was very freeing. It was very freeing to sit in your tiny apartment in Bombay and be a part of a film that, was an Australian production, or a German production, or an Italian director. And I actually realized that this is what I had really wanted, to actually be local and yet think global. And Qissa was, again, many countries came together to make that film. And Anup Singh is just such a masterful, director. But I was absolutely terrified because how do you play a man? How do you play such a complex character, which is great to read, but you could completely fail, right, in executing it as an actor. And I think I troubled him a lot with those questions, wanting references of what kind. And he explained to me very gently, over time that there is no one notion of man or woman, and he doesn't care to portray a certain kind of man. He wanted me to just focus on being a good son. And she would do anything to win her father's love. And once that became the approach, everything just started flowing. So there was basically 7 months of prep. I learned Punjabi, I learned how to swim. I learned how to drive because I didn't know how to drive. Like if Irfan laughs at me and says that, were you waiting for this film to learn everything that was essential in life? Did you not know? And it's really true. I think this film became a university of sorts for me. So I had basically 4 classes. I had my driving, my swimming, my Punjabi, and very interesting choice of Kalari Paitu, which is one of the oldest, forms of martial art, which Anup felt would be a wonderful training to undergo because it would make my body neutral, help me basically access the masculine and the feminine without favoring one over the other. And it really became liberating. And one really, in the playing of the film and in the preparing of the film, I actually physically realized how fluid gender identity is and how we are forced into women have to sit with their legs crossed. You can't sit this way and you can't stand this way. And I think it really changed my relationship with my body tremendously. And I really do admire people now. I really do admire people who have a sense of androgyny in them and have not been socialized into being uber masculine or uber feminine because that's the right thing to do. I celebrate that ambiguity and that androgyny, I think, really because of my experience of working with Anup on Qissa.
And after Qissa, I think one of the other films I really wanted to talk about was your role of an education consultant, Shikha, in Hindi medium, which again I absolutely loved. I can only imagine how refreshing it was to kind of break away from that template of intense characters and really showcase your versatility as an actor. I'm just curious, how is it playing this character and doing that in the presence of actors like Irfan Khan?
Actually, it's because it was Irfan that I could, do what I did. I came on set and I told her I'm going to try a few things. And I just, whether she breaks into German or she has a certain... I enjoy doing comedy so much that it was such a relief that when Hindi medium came to me, I was like, this is it. I'm going to make this character. I hope to create moments that are comic. And Irfan just let me improvise because, we've worked together on films before and he's so secure. Perhaps with other Bollywood actors, one would have to follow the script. But because Irfan is so secure, it was wonderful to just play with him, and he just allowed me to do whatever I wanted to do of the character. So it was very liberating,
Yeah. And the same year, we also saw you in Konkona Sensharma's beautiful film, A Death in the Gunj. Again, it's a film that I absolutely love. And here you played a really bright and happy character called Bonnie Bakshi. How was it working in this film? Such a great cast, a wonderful set of actors, amazing director. What was the atmosphere like, and what did that film do for you?
I think that film was, it was Konkona's first feature film. It meant a lot to be a part of it. I was aware of, her process of writing the film, an early draft on. So when she offered me the part, I was thrilled. My focus was on this film was not as much about, I hope I can get my character right, but it was just about, I hope she can get everything that she wants and she can get the scenes for the day, because it was really important for me that my friend was able to make the film that she really wanted to make, for which she had worked so hard. So working on the film was really special because it was one of us, one of us taking her first step in making a film. And every issue that came up in the process of filming, whether it was location or, we were shooting in an area, the politics of the place is very volatile. So, a strike would mean we wouldn't be able to shoot, which meant, we had to shoot much more in one day than we had planned. So all the stress of it's making a film is like really going to war, and it felt very personal. It felt like even if I wasn't in a scene, I was very invested in it, because I wanted it so bad for it to just be what she wanted it to be. But I also got to see how difficult it is to make a film, when you are involved in the process from the beginning, getting the funding, then getting the locations, getting the actors, getting the permission, then the film gets made, and then, my goodness, distributing it. It just, it's a really long process,
Yeah.
It's very heartening. When it actually comes out, it feels like really like a miracle,
And now I want to talk about one of the recent films of yours, which has been gaining a lot of traction and has been absolutely loved across the world. It's Rohena Gera's Sir. And here you're playing what has been called your career's best performance. You play Ratna, a young widowed woman who works as a domestic help, but has bigger dreams about being a fashion designer. What did this film do to you, and how did you approach Ratna as a character?
I actually read the film. The script was sent to me when I was shooting for Death in the Gunj. And I told the director that I won't be able to get to the script until I finish shooting for Death in the Gunj. But we had a day off, and I thought I'll read a little bit of it. And it was, I started reading it, and I couldn't stop, because the negotiation in the film is a negotiation across class. And it's a very, very volatile and a very delicate negotiation. And I was really wondering, how this film would end and where it would really go. And growing up in the Indian context, having someone work in your house is something that we've grown up with. It's so normal that I felt really like I had blood on my hands. I felt I was culpable, and I was guilty of the very thing that the film critiqued. And that the possibility of a relationship, of a friendship, of a relationship across class is such an impossibility in our country. No one talks about it, and you can't even call it a problem until you recognize it as one. It's like modern day slavery, in a way. And really, like, when I was looking for online for stories of people who have, let's say, married across class or friendships across class, there was really nothing. If you Googled a relationship between a man and his maid, the only hits that came up was pornography.
Yeah.
So it made me realize that actually the only way in which we can imagine friendship between two people who are from two different classes of society in my country is currently pornography. And that's when I realized that this negotiation between these two characters as they navigate through the film is such a delicate one, I felt my sense of responsibility of at no point it being voyeuristic, or it was a very delicate dance. It could very easily become something that didn't feel right. But I mean, doing that film made me very aware of the privilege that I have, of the my immense sense of entitlement, and you think you're a nice person, but when you do films like this, you realize you have a really long way to go, and there's so many monsters inside you that you really need to reckon with, because the woman who works in our house, they are literally sharing such an intimate space with us. They're in our bedrooms, in our kitchens, and yet there's such a distance. You get into a taxi here, you don't look at the man who's driving the car as someone possibly, would I be interested in going for a date with this guy? You don't even look at it, because it's not something you would. I mean, I wouldn't date my driver. Why have we we are the sense of class and entitlement is so deeply ingrained that we don't even question our own politics. But when you do a film like this, you're really stripped, and you're really naked, and you see yourself for who you are and how much work you have to do, in order to be the person you'd like to be, or you think you are.
That's so true. I think the film really points to a larger problem that's embedded in our system, but that's almost unspoken of. And I think you, the director, and Vivek, all of you were wonderful, and that's why the film has resonated. I feel that the last couple of years, we've seen you in a very diverse set of roles, whether it's in Hindi medium, A Death in the Gunj, and now in Sir. I'm curious, has this diversity of roles helped you make the process of finding interesting roles easier for you? Can the industry see you differently now than it could have before?
I think things have changed. It's been a very slow process. I've been so comfortable being an outsider in the industry that I was very pleasantly surprised when things started to change very gradually, and it catches up with you, and you're like, okay, I was nominated for a Filmfare for Death in the Gunj, which is a mainstream award in India. I was, nominated and won the Best Actress at Indian festival called Jagran, which was the first award that I won in India, and it felt really nice to be accepted at home. I had wanted to be a part of this industry, but never managed to, because I did such films that were so independent and that weren't distributed in a mainstream sort of way. And I just, I was quite okay with it. I was okay with being, an outsider, being in the margins, because I was still being allowed to express myself creatively. But I mean, gaining that kind of acceptance and appreciation from your peers in your own country is a very special feeling. And I think that has changed, and it's very heartening.
And and just to go back to the Jagran Film Festival, where you won the Best Actress award, while you were accepting your award, you talked about a loneliness. You said that I started this journey 20 years ago, and my films are of a kind that doesn't get backed by big studios and doesn't usually have huge marketing budgets. So it feels lonely sometimes and isolated. Did the loneliness or the isolation ever get frustrating enough that you thought of maybe quitting the industry or pursuing a different path altogether? Did that ever happen?
I mean, there have been moments of, many months, sometimes a year or more of not having any work. And and I've questioned, I've questioned whether I made the right choices. And, you question your sense of worth, your self-esteem takes a beating. But, as you grow older, you realize that this is what I chose. I chose to be a part of a profession, which is, where uncertainty is the only certainty. So if I have to be, I have to have a long range view, I can't collapse and doubt myself every time there's no work. And I started playing this game with myself where I would actually give myself tasks to do in a day. I would swim, I would read, I would walk. And when I started doing that, I realized actually I can have a really productive day without anyone giving me a job to do. And when work would come in, if it wasn't something that was better than the day that I already had, I would say no to it. So then, it became easier as one grew older, and the feeling of powerlessness that actors often go through, right? Because you feel like, unless you're given an opportunity, how are you going to show what you have? I think that sadness was replaced by a sense of energy that I can have a great day. I can do a lot in a month, in a year. And I found it very easy to refuse work if I
Yeah.
didn't like it.
Yeah, so I had a quick question about the Hindi film industry, which is primarily what you've worked in. And, the Hindi film industry has been going through a lot of changes. And one of the largest ones, of course, has been the eruption of the metoo movement, which is acknowledging and addressing sexual harassment of women in the film industry and all workplaces in general. With the movement, have things actually changed on ground, or is it still something that's slowly finding its place?
Have things really changed? I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't believe they have. Because the movement in India, as opposed to the movement in America, were very, very different. Because our legal system is very different from the American legal system. And so, unfortunately, the movement in India, while it was needed, the legal repercussions of coming out wasn't very clear. So
Mm,
where do you go after you've shared what you've shared?
yeah.
What are the consequences? Uh, the consequences for a lot of women who spoke out was perhaps the idea of them not getting work. And so I feel like it did create perhaps a slight sense of fear. Uh,
Mhm.
but systemically, did it change anything? I don't think so.
And now, Tillotama, I wanted to ask about when we're going to get to see you next, and maybe if you can tell us what you're working on right now. Are there films, digital projects, plays, anything that is occupying your time?
I've started prep for a feature film that will be directed by Rima Das,
Oh,
uh,
wow.
and another film by Anup Singh, which will only start in 2021. But next year is Rima's film, and another film that I can't talk about yet, but hopefully I can, share about it soon. But they're two very, very exciting projects. They're two projects which have very, very strong female protagonists, and both films are really unpacking the complexity of being a woman in India. And I'm very, very excited to work on both these films. A film that perhaps will come out next is Madhuja Mukherjee's film. She was the co-writer of Qissa,
Oh, yeah.
and it's her debut feature. It was a fascinating script, and a fascinating process. And it's tentatively titled as Deep Six right now. But
Mhm.
Madhuja's really written a film and directed a film which was, for me, I think playing a character like that is something that I could have only done now. You had to live a little bit
Yeah.
before, you could play a woman who's going through so much and chooses to express it in such a way.
Yeah.
And that, it's not a coincidence, right? That you have these women filmmakers who have trusted me with
Mhm.
their films, and they're all happening at a time when I've turned 40, and there are these women who are making these films about women who are complex creatures, you know, whether it's their hysteria or their grief or their joy. There's such a lack of judgment, and there's such a unique way, a grammar of expressing interiority, that I feel like my entire life was a
Mhm.
preparation for this moment, for this moment to be gifted
Yeah.
I'm really excited that these women exist and they're making such films.
Yeah, and we're really excited to see you in these films when they come out. Thank you so much. I personally am really looking forward to all the work you're going to do and continue to do.